Thomas in Georgia says, proof to Matt that God does exist. So how you doing?
Not to me.
Thomas?
Thomas?
Come on now. It's supposed to be proof of God, and you're not on. Hello.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Had you on mute.
Oh, yeah. Would this proof work for Don, too, or is this just for me?
Don? Oh, it was mostly for you, Matt.
Okay. I don't understand how proof of God could only apply to me, but I'm ready. Bring it on.
Oh, well, what I meant is I wanted to talk to you. Matt, I'm a little curious. I want to know the basis you use to determine if anything is likely true. Do you use reasoning and or evidence to determine you are like, okay. So I was just saying that because once in a debate you said your senses have not failed you yet or else you would be dead. So you're not fully 100% sure that anything is, but you are likely sure.
Sure. I don't have absolute certainty about anything, but I proportion my confidence level to the evidence that supports it. And when I say things like my senses haven't failed me yet, I'm talking about that in a specific context because my senses have in fact failed me, as is everybody else's. We've all had optical illusions and auditory illusions and things like that. And I won't remember exactly where that quote came from, but that was probably a discussion about whether or not the senses qualify as properly basic, as if we should just trust them on their own. And I reject that idea because I know the senses can be fooled, and it's through independent verification of what my senses tell me that I determine whether or not something is likely or reliable, not merely my own senses. So if I see an apparition appear here and Don doesn't see it and nobody else here sees it, it seems far more likely that there's something wrong with my senses than that I have clued into the one thing everybody else missed.
Okay, I wasn't depending so much on your senses as much as your deductive reasoning skills. So, Matt, I once heard you and a co-host come to the conclusion that non-existence cannot exist. Therefore, existence has always been. Would you agree?
No, I don't believe anybody has ever said that.
I think I know what you're talking about in the sense that Tracy has pointed out that there's no reason to think that nothing could exist, and it may have been phrased at some point as non-existence. But yes, non-existence is not existence definitionally. But if you're talking about if you're talking about in the broader sense of like a cosmic sense of something versus nothing, then we have no evidence of a nothing. Even saying a nothing turns it into something, and there's no reason to think that there ever was or could be nothing.
Okay, so something has always existed.
That is the inference from that seems most reasonable until someone can demonstrate nothing existing.
Okay, so using that logic, we can assume that our reality or our universe is eternal.
No. No, because our universe is really what we would call the local presentation of the universe. And the current math traces that back essentially under the Big Bang cosmological model to a singularity, but we can't investigate beyond that. So we cannot say whether perhaps the singularity always existed in some form or another, or whether it is a product of a multiverse, whether or not there was cyclic creation and destruction of universes through some natural process or otherwise.
Right, and time may have been created at that time too, and so the notion of something before is really potentially nonsense.
Yeah, there's no such thing as what happened before time.
Okay, well, something, it doesn't have to be our universe, something other than our universe may have existed always.
I see no problem with the notion that something has always existed.
Okay, what I'm trying to get around to, if we can agree that something has always existed, I'm trying to get around to consciousness. Is it more likely that consciousness formed out of non-conscious matter?
Yes.
Or that consciousness is... So it's more likely that consciousness formed out of non-conscious matter.
So consciousness is a label that for a phenomenon that we observe and try to define and understand, but consciousness isn't fully explained. But for example, my personal consciousness, at one point, I have no reason to think it existed prior to my brain developing, and that it emerges from my brain, from the physical matter. That is what the evidence points to with regard to thought and consciousness.
And we have billions of examples of consciousness coming from non-consciousness, right?
We do?
Yeah.
Every living thing that
Every
is
living
conscious
thing.
was once not.
Yeah, that's what I'm debating right now. If consciousness has always existed, then
I don't think it
didn't come
has.
From
Do you have evidence for that?
I don't, just because something's always existed doesn't mean consciousness has always existed. What evidence do you have that consciousness has always existed?
Well, first, let me explain what I think consciousness is. I think it is that which has knowledge of self as well as of other, and other being other than self.
Okay, so you're looking at consciousness as any thinking agent that also contains a theory of mind, the ability to recognize other minds as well.
That's a fine definition. We can go with
I'm
that.
okay with that.
Okay, so do you think it is possible for non-thinking matter as far as we know, is unconscious, it is insentient, and lacks any kind of awareness whatsoever?
So you're already using the wrong terms, because a rock is matter and my brain is matter. And one of the two of them is demonstrably conscious and the other one isn't. So you can't just talk about whether or not matter can produce consciousness. It's a specific type and configuration of matter that produces consciousness.
Okay, this is what I'm trying to get at. If before you existed, was there a time where consciousness did not exist, therefore consciousness had to arise from rocks or dust or gas?
Consciousness doesn't arise from rocks or dust.
Okay, well, that's all we had to work with in the beginning.
No. Well, that's what I'm saying is I don't have any reason to think that anything, well, I'm not, in the beginning, we'll go with Big Bang. I don't think there was anything that was conscious there, and there's no evidence of anything that was conscious there. The first evidence we have of something that's conscious is in thinking agents on our planet that we have discovered throughout recorded history. But the consciousness didn't arise from rocks or dust. It arose from living brain matter, the neurons firing in a particular organization and construct.
Okay, but these neurons and brain matter did not always exist.
Correct, and when they didn't, there's no reason to think there was consciousness.
Okay, so let me tell you a bit about my belief. My belief is that God is a conscious being that has always existed. It is my belief that this God is all-knowing. One rule that humans already have determined as likely true is that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We have determined that rule of this universe to be likely true. There is an afterglow of radiation in our universe that scientists think is likely the result of a Big Bang.
Yeah.
It is my belief that this Big Bang was the most recent intervention from God in our universe.
So do you have any actual evidence for this belief, or is this just what you're convinced of?
Let me tell you a little bit more, so we can.
Well, I don't think we need to go there, because it's a fairly simple question. You're convinced that what we would look at and say is the cosmic microwave background radiation, which seems to confirm the current Big Bang model, is in fact a remnant of the latest conscious creation thing from God. And all I wanted to know is, do you have evidence for this, or are you just telling me that's what you're convinced of?
Well, we can take God out of that situation for now, and just looking at the facts as they are, you can still determine deductively that, well, just let me finish one moment here. All I'm saying is that as for the law that states that for every action there is a reaction, I can determine it is most likely
that's a law of physics.
Composition. Okay. And using that law of physics, that's most likely correct. We can determine that the composition of our universe today is a result of the Big Bang. In other words, me and you and the Earth and how our day will go tomorrow was all determined billions of years ago when particles first got set into motion.
No. So you're conflating two things. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying, no, you're conflating two things. And one is, if we recognize that there was an instantiation of our local universe, that in no way confirms the second half of what you're saying, that everything was determined. The universe may in fact be deterministic, And within determinism, there's the notion of hard determinism, which would fit into your thing, which is at the instant that the universe started to expand, everything that would ever happen was predetermined. And then there's a soft deterministic view, which is that it's largely deterministic and runs in an orderly fashion, but there may be quantum indeterminacy that affects this. But the fact that you've observed, for example, cosmic microwave background radiation tells you nothing about whether or not the universe is hard deterministic, soft deterministic, or apparently deterministic yet not. So I'm just saying you can't get from your A point to your B point.
Okay, well, would you agree that we are made up of the same elements and particles that were present at the Big Bang?
No.
No, because matter and energy are fungible. They can change into each other, and
Yes, they can change.
The Big Bang was mostly
create new.
Mostly created hydrogen.
Yeah, and so it's not like it's not like uranium was present in the Big Bang.
Okay, but over time, different particles interacted with each other and made that element.
Right. Yes, but that's not.
Yeah. So how does this get us to God?
Particles.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, what I'm getting at is
you seem to be making a big
reaction.
You seem to be making a big argument from ignorance that, gee whiz, look at this mysterious thing, therefore God.
I don't think it's mysterious. I think that for every action, there is a reaction. And using that logic, it is logical to deduce that what is going on right now is an ongoing action, an ongoing reaction of the action of the Big Bang.
Well, so even to the extent that if we were to apply action-reaction to this, you'd have a better time arguing that there was an inverse universe created at the same time that our universe was created and that it's running in a different fashion. You shouldn't look at a causal chain, and just because we can talk about action and reaction, that's not the case for each individual step in there. It's when you're talking about causality, this caused this, caused this, caused this, et cetera, down this chain. That's not the same as for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. But what Don's asking is, okay, he and I will probably agree that the cosmic microwave background radiation, which seems to affirm the Big Bang model, at least for now, irrespective of whether or not you think it's a God, does not necessarily mean that the universe is entirely deterministic. But even if we looked at it as largely deterministic and there was a causal chain through all these things, how the hell does that get you to God?
Well, the first step that would be putting us on is that everything has already been determined.
Well, I already rejected that. It is you have not demonstrated that everything is determined. But even if I were to agree with you that everything is predetermined, if we went the hard determinism route and said that if we rewound time and let time play forward again, everything would have happened exactly the same way that it did. Even if I agreed with that, that does not get you to God.
Okay, the second step of that would be consciousness. You would either say that it's just by chance that everything was determined how it was, or that consciousness, if it always existed, the conscious mind.
You keep adding it. So first of all, I don't agree with it. The universe is necessarily deterministic in that sense. But for the sake of argument, I said if I did, that doesn't get you to God. Then you come back with, well, if consciousness has always existed, which I've already rejected, I do not believe and see no evidence or reason to think that consciousness has already existed. So now you're adding in a second thing that you can't demonstrate and trying to build a case off those. You have to build a case off things if you're going to convince people that you can either demonstrate to be the case or get them to assent that it is the case. And you haven't done that for any of it.
Okay, so for the first part, you do not agree that the Big Bang is an action that spawned reactions that put us where we are today.
Not in the action-reaction sense. Is it a foundational causal component for the universe that we inhabit today? Yes.
Okay, so what does that mean? Do you partially believe that it is the cause?
Determinism is not a thing. It's at the smallest levels. The universe is a quantum thing, and it's inherently statistical. it's not like bowling balls rolling around hitting pins. It is fields and probability calculations and these sorts of things. And we cannot predict, and it is impossible to predict when an atom is going to decay, for example. Statistically, you can measure the rate of decay of a bunch of atoms, but you can't know about a particular one. It is a purely spontaneous, uncaused thing.
Okay, I understand what you mean. Well, I guess that is all the point.
And all this is going on in our brains too, and in how nature behaves all over the place. And so this idea that it's a clockwork universe is just false.
Okay, well, I guess I'll have to concede on that point.
Okay, can I ask you this, Thomas?
Yes.
For the sake of argument,
Sure.
because I'm happy for you to go back and reconsider, reformat, come up with a different thing. But if I were to say, yes, the universe is purely deterministic, and from the instant the universe began, everything that would ever happen was set in motion then, and if you were to rewind and replay it, it would play out exactly the same, which is what you're arguing for, this hard deterministic thing. Even if I were to concede that, it doesn't get you to a God. It doesn't get you to consciousness always existing. And even if I were well, I can't concede that consciousness always existed, but I don't know how you can possibly get to, therefore, God, even if I were to concede most of that.
Well, if you were to concede all of it, that consciousness has always existed.
Yeah, that would be really. Yeah, if I conceded consciousness always existed, then there would then the response is, well, there has to be some consciousness prior to all the consciousness that we're aware of. But there's no point in conceding that because there's not evidence for it. But what you were starting to say was that if the universe is deterministic and consciousness has always existed, and then you were going to follow up with something outside of that, apart from just saying, you don't need any of the rest of that. If consciousness always existed, then okay, you have an argument for some sort of conscious agent prior to the beginning.
God is that consciousness.
And then you get to call that God. It doesn't tell me what you know about God or if God's still here or any of those things. So the path that you're going down, I don't see how it can possibly get you where you want it to go. And so a better question to ask is, why do you believe, and what do you think should convince somebody else? And you don't have to answer that now. I was just helping you direct things for next time, because I think we're going to move on to other callers.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to go brainstorm and reformat. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right.